I'm Chris. I'm Claudia and Peter's pastor. I'm the pastor at Nativity Lutheran Church. I do a lot of funerals.
Yeah.
Last time I counted, I've been a pastor 18 years, and I think the count is 160. It's a lot. It's sacred work. I actually much prefer funerals to weddings. I'll just say that. At weddings, they want the pastor to get out of the way so they can get to the reception. Almost universally. There's rare exceptions to that, but most of the time, But at a funeral, people are actually interested. Something happened they care about. Somebody they know that they love is not with us. And television isn't going to solve your problem. And television is the Church of America. And it's a hollow church. And the public schools didn't teach us what to do either. And so this is one of the places where people actually lean in and say, I wonder if a pastor could help. I wonder if the church has something to say. So here I am. Hi. I don't pretend that I'm your pastor, but I'm Claudia's. And so what I want to do with you is what I've learned helps a lot of families. And that is, we're going to do a two-step process. Tomorrow we're having a service for Pete. It's at 1:30, and it's going to be, as you would hope, full of photography. We're honoring Pete. And so this particular service wins the prize for the most gorgeous photography of any service I've ever done. I think there's more great photography in this one than in probably the other 155 put together. So that's anxious about funerals because the emotions can become very high. If you need a Kleenex, the windowsills all have Kleenex boxes. It's been my experience, though, that when I can gather the family the night before, as we're gathering now, and guide you in just remembering some stories, it really helps tomorrow be much more beautiful for you because you've already maybe had a tear and had a laugh. You've heard stories and you're ready. And so this is kind of a gift to help you be ready for tomorrow. We humans are different than the rest of the creatures, not in some ways, but in one particular way, we humans live by story. We tell children stories. We remember stories of our family, and it's in the stories that we find our place in our family system, in our friend systems, and in the greater realm of creation. And if you want to talk about God, God has a huge story too. And so to name the stories that are true for us helps us as humans engage what we're feeling. So I'm going to ask you to tell stories, and some of you probably aren't going to tell a story at all, and some of you might tell 2 or 3. I don't know. I don't care. What's important is that you get to tell a story that you want to, and that you hear stories you haven't heard before or that you forgot. Because that's going to help you honor Pete and honor you and what you're feeling. That's my goal tonight. I'll get you telling stories, and then I'll say, well, it's time to go. And we will have practiced a discipline that most humans can't do, and that's the art of telling our family stories. And then as you gather over the years in the future, you know how to do this. And your stories, you'll say, remember when we did that? I got a story to tell. And that'll be a gift for you as a family. The senses, and your senses are how you remember things most. So bear with me. I'm just going to invite you to tell stories. So the first thing is, what did you call him?
Uncle Pete.
Uncle Pete.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just Pete. Not just Pete. It's Pete.
Just Pete. Yeah. Pete. Yeah. Not cousin Pete or anything. I called him Honey.
Honey.
Family photographer.
Family photographer.
What did you call Pete?
I call him Pete. No. Claudia, I didn't hear. What did you call?
I called Pete, most of the time I called him Honey.
Oh, yeah.
Which was great because she called us us both honey. So if we were within an earshot, we both respond. It wasn't a designation.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. What did he call you?
Guy.
Yeah.
Guy.
Yeah. Guy. Say it like he did, honey.
No, I'm hey guy. He's the only person in the world that called me Guy.
Yeah.
He's the only one.
Yeah.
It was just Guy for Dad.
Yeah.
Hey Guy.
And you called him Dad.
Called him Dad, Pop, Snapper.
Snapper?
Some things he liked and some he didn't, but like, mostly Dad or Pop.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call you, Claudia?
He called me honey, too.
Honey? Okay.
Called you Hun.
Hun. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Called me by my name.
Marv?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Unlike her, she would call me her little tiger.
Yep.
Okay.
This was Tig. Yeah,
Tig.
from when he was, you know.
Uh-huh. Right.
Oh. Yeah.
I would say Pete, he was very focused,
Okay.
very focused.
Focused on what?
Whatever pleased him.
Okay.
Kept mainly nature,
Yeah.
and he was focused on his friends too, but he was focused. It was always about nature. I don't correct me if I'm wrong, sis, but
No. He had a special bond with you, Bud, because he was very interested in the weather also.
Yeah,
They would always talk the weather, and Bud's career was in weather for the U.S. Weather Bureau.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
but I didn't dare go against what he thought.
Yeah.
He was also really focused on his music.
Mhm.
How many long play records does he have in there?
Oh gosh, Jen.
Thousands.
Yeah,
It's bigger than the
thousands.
City of Sisters.
He was focused on getting everybody in the house into the room to watch a slideshow
After a great meal,
after a meal
by Claudia, put the music
to
on,
watch a slideshow with music. And it was
slideshow
awesome.
with music, and we'd all be asleep.
And sometimes he would even fall asleep showing us slides.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the middle of it.
In the middle of it.
That's my favorite memories of Pete.
Oh.
Slideshow after dinner. How often would that happen?
Every time I was here.
Every night.
Every time he could finagle it.
That's right.
He loved a captive audience.
Would these slideshows be different?
Oh, yeah.
Or would they be like, oh, we saw that one 2 years ago?
Sometimes.
be new.
They'd be new.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
These weren't slideshows, these were pure poetry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the slideshows are what you bore your friends with.
Okay. This is art.
Yeah.
This is the music that was phenomenal.
Oh, the volume was always high.
There was no talking during the show.
Which was great.
Unless he was narrating.
Well,
He did narrate.
that's true.
He could tell you the weather, if a storm rolled in shortly before or after he took, what he was doing. He had a photographic memory of those moments.
He could
And
tell you the date, he could tell you the year and the month of when he took a picture,
A picture.
going back decades.
he remembered that joy, and it was like he just wanted to share that joy of that moment.
And so spectacular that our children learned to appreciate what they were looking at because his pictures were all just beautiful, amazing.
I think Pete wanted to share his joy. He wanted others to experience his joy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
True.
I think so. Yep. Yep. Definitely.
Pete used to have a picture in one of the spare bedrooms, I think, that said, music is the flower of feeling.
That's interesting.
Yeah, music is the flower of feeling. That's beautiful. I don't think he copyrighted that, Pastor. I think you can use that anytime you want to.
Yeah, I think it just went in. My family are musical, and my daughter is a professional musician.
Oh, she's got a beautiful voice.
That's resonance with my soul.
Oh gosh.
What would make him laugh?
Oh, actually.
There was a time where no matter what subject was brought up, the answer could always be Finland.
Oh.
Up with Finland. And he would say, "Oh, guess who else has Finland?"
Guess who does it right? Finland.
We knew the answer.
Could I ask a question, sis?
Yes, bud.
You know, you're mentioning Finland,
Yeah.
and his favorite composers were Sibelius
Sibelius.
and others.
Mm-hmm.
But the music is so dark.
It's well, it's you know, but Sibelius's music puts landscape into music, and that's why he was so drawn
Yes,
to it. Yeah,
yes,
it has mountains and it has cloud formations. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That was neat.
yeah.
You like to show documentaries, particularly if they were about Finland. Their prowess in the wars, and
Their prowess in the wars.
and also about social justice. Corporations, he was big on people knowing about.
Noam Chomsky.
Oh yeah, Noam Chomsky.
Noam Chomsky. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Where did Finland?
It was after Norway. He first fell in
Norway first.
Norway first,
And then he discovered
and
the
then-
East.
and then he discovered Finland.
He's a true Viking.
Yeah, yeah. The Nordic cultures, the lakes. He loved the lakes.
Yeah.
All the lakes in Finland. He loved to swim in lakes, Chris. And
Mm-hmm.
so much of Finland is flat, but the southeast part of it is 188,000 lakes or something. You know, it
It's
was
more than Minnesota.
That's right.
Sis,
Never him swim.
Yeah.
sis,
Yeah.
you mentioned lakes
Yeah.
and how he appreciated them. And there's some people from Alaska here. On one of his days off, he was at Wonder Lake, enjoying the lake and natural. And somebody was leading a group. I said, oh, that's some kind of a...
Man Eagleson.
Man
What was
Eagleson,
that?
Yeah,
Man
it was.
Eagleson,
It was just right next to Wonder Lake, bud. It was a kettle pond.
Okay.
And Pete used to go and cool off in the kettle pond, you know, because it got hot in Alaska for, you know, comparatively speaking. And so he was just, you know, he was out there enjoying it, and maybe he had taken his suit along, and maybe he hadn't, and that day he hadn't. And one of the guests was glassing the horizon, you know, and stopped and exclaimed, "Oh my goodness, there's a bare ass skinny dipper out there." And he never lived that down.
No.
Never, yeah.
He became the Yahtzee king.
That's right.
Oh, no kidding.
When we would get together and play family games over at Eagle Crest and different places, we got him to think that he was.
He did. He and I were a team, huh, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
He would
toward
shake
the
it.
end, when he really didn't have the ability to do
Yeah.
very much at all,
Yeah.
Claudia would take the dice and put them in her hand and put her hand in his hand and shake. And
We eventually got a cup, didn't we, Jen, which worked better.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It was something that that we could keep him still participating with us.
I know. I've told them so many times, Chris, that meant very much to Pete in those, you know, in the last months and in the last half year and years when he was losing so much of what he had retained. When we were talking about music, you know, and Bruce said he could remember the day, and Pete could tell you, he could listen to a piece of music. He knew the composer. He knew the piece. He knew probably the hall that they were performing it in, and the year. And it was archival, his knowledge of that was. And it was part of a grieving process to watch that slip away from him.
Yeah.
It was all gone, Chris. Yeah.
And I remember we had a get together and it was at Eagle Crest, wasn't it? When the Andre Rieu
Yes.
played.
Yes.
And it well, there was a skit that was really funny and stuff, and we enjoyed, but there is music, and Pete said, "Oh, that's such and such," and Claudia was next to me, and she said, "Oh, he doesn't really know," and I said, "I think he does."
He probably did,
right.
Jen. He was right. Yeah. So there were moments like that were so nice that the family enabled for him. You know, so nice. Yeah.
His sense of humor. Remember when he was in the nursing home that last time over here?
Yeah.
And they were working with the breathing apparatus thing on his nose. And something went weird, and all of a sudden Pete goes.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And when he was not able to eat real food, had to have it, however you describe
Through a stomach port. Yeah.
And he was so gracious. He looked longingly, and sometimes, "Can I have a little bit of that?" Because you can imagine how miserable it would be to be able to smell, to be able to watch people to eat, and you couldn't have any real food ever.
Yeah.
But he accepted it graciously.
He did.
Would try and see if he couldn't just have a little tiny bit. And Claudia would very sweetly say, "No, honey, you that." But he accepted it when he had to.
When he had to, he never complained, but he never stopped asking either. Can I have some of that? How about that?
So tell me about when you think of Pete and food.
He knew his spices. He knew
what food?
what would make it good.
Oh.
Well, he when I worked with him in Alaska, he was always really excited about all of the food, especially if it was like a little bit, tweaked a little different, especially for the staff. He'd come in and be like, what's cooking? And he'd always be very complimentary. He's always like, "Oh, you're a great cook," and just so excited about anything, even though maybe it wasn't always that great, but he was very excited.
You were a great cook.
Well, he loved all kinds of beverages too. Boxed wine.
Yeah.
I loved his boxed wine.
Yes.
And beer.
And beer.
He loved beer.
Yeah.
What kind?
I mean,
Homebrew.
he would drink what he found at the store. It could be Kirkland, it could be Deschutes Brewery. He just, when I would come home during the college years and other times, one of the first things he would do is ask me if I want a beer after the trip, and we'd get one out of the fridge, and we wouldn't even pour it in a glass. We'd just clink bottles and take a sip, and he always said, "That's good." Every time.
I remember that.
Hams, yeah. Nice.
He always used to dog in for the hams.
I think that might have been one of the first beers Dad let me try. Maybe up at Falk Lake, but he just loved simple pleasures. Complex ones too, but I mean, I've never seen someone that can lie down in the sun and look so at peace and just let nature envelop him. so at peace. And he shared that.
Cloudberry jam too, right? He loved wildberry jam.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
cloudberry and lingonberries and blueberry.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's good. We're making a list of food. So.
What did he put the jam on?
um,
What did he spread the jam on?
English muffins.
toast,
Oh, yeah, English muffins.
English muffins?
English muffins.
Okay.
Sometimes buckwheat pancakes, huh?
Yeah.
I
Made his own
love
butter
it.
pancakes.
Lefse.
Lefse, maybe, yeah, Lefse, yeah. His buckwheat pancakes, though, you guys, he could build houses with them. Remember how tough they were, Steve, you guys? We'd come over and hear, oh, good, buckwheat pancakes.
Figure out what would be the grossest food that you could possibly think of, and he said lutefisk. But like lutefisk's assholes or something.
Yes, we had a can of, somebody had given us a can of lutefisk assholes.
What?
You know, it was like cream of mushroom soup or something.
Was it like a joke can or something? Or?
We saved that can forever. Oh, gosh. Yeah.
What would make him grumpy?
Politicians.
Amen. Right on, Bruce. Yep. Yep.
And lack of snow.
Yeah.
Traffic.
Oh, gosh, yes.
He just avoids cities at any possible cost. He could. I think if there was a county road that would take him around a city he didn't want to be in, he'd find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, traffic drove him nuts.
He would go through like Yakima instead of going up through Seattle to go up to Alaska.
Yeah, that's right.
Because he hated Seattle traffic.
Yep, yep, yep.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't like it too.
He used to go way east. Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't it the lack of snow that drove you out of Alaska?
I guess it was
in
back in
86?
the, right.
You had like 2 bad winters in a row
Yeah.
and Pete said, enough,
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
I know. And they were having great winters down here in the Cascades. That didn't hurt either, Bruce.
What was his draw to snow? Did he ski, snowshoe?
Skied, cross country skied, and
Photograph it.
photographed it. You bet. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we used to go almost every weekend. Pete would call us up and we'd go up and spend the weekend with Pete and Claudia. And in the winter we'd go skiing, and Pete would always know the best place to go cross-country skiing. And he would go down these hills and he would have his arms out and his legs were like rubber, and he'd just go down that hill. It was just hilarious to see him go down the hill, because we'd fall, but he would make it down. He would just be like a rubber man going down the hill. And then in the summer, it was always, he always knew. He'd look up at the sky, and we'd say, which way should we go this weekend, Pete? And he'd go like, well, I think we need to go south. And then we'd go south and the weather would be beautiful and we'd have a wonderful day. We'd hike and swim in the cold lakes.
Yeah. Yes. Oh.
Every time we saw a lake, oh, the water's fine, guys, come on in.
I only fell for that once.
And if you were in those lakes, your heart would stop.
and we'd say, maybe you need it a little bit warmer, so we'd throw some ice cubes in to warm it up.
I don't think of him as a rotund man.
Yeah.
Was he always slender?
Oh, yes.
So not a lot of blubber to keep him warm. It was something else.
It was a mindset.
Mindset.
Yeah.
He had so much exercise that he couldn't possibly get overweight.
Yeah. Yeah.
He loved the invigoration of the cold water. Like he would, more than once, he'd describe how when you got out of water, your skin would tingle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he loved that feeling.
Yeah.
Do any of you share that love?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. I was up the lake with Claudia, and I actually went up to Moraine Lake and went down it, and she never saw me do that before. She's like, that's like Pete. Yeah, but I love cold water.
And his grandson.
Okay.
Watched him jump into cold water that's actually made him yell out loud.
Made
Yell
Everett?
from the pain.
Made Everett, yeah.
There's some performance in it too.
So when Pete got into really cold water, describe the event. Was there a whoop and a holler, or was there simply a silent entry and a delight? I mean, what did you see?
Silent entry and
Yep.
delight.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
just
yep.
embraced
For
it.
everybody else, excruciating pain.
That was his way of acting out his sadism.
Maybe it's because he enjoyed suffering with other people suffering with him. I don't know.
I know. Boy, yeah. His sister told that story, Nance. The story about when Pete coaxed her to come into Bear Springs up near Portland, and he was doing some ranger work up there at the time. And he said, "Oh, Nance," he said, "come on in." He said, "The water is great." And he jumped in, and he just jumped in, and he said, "Yeah, come on in, it's great," and she did. And she shot straight up. And she told that story every single time we talked about swimming.
Did you get in with him?
Oh, sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah. Very slowly, very gradually.
Okay. You didn't just jump in.
Prolonging the torture.
Yeah.
What?
Prolonging the torture.
Prolonging the torture, I guess that's it, Brian. Oh.
I think of Pete as being fairly mellow in his personality. In fact, I'm going to tell this on you, Claudia.
Uh-oh.
I remember we were going somewhere. I don't know where we were going, but you were following. I think. Well, he was driving,
Okay.
and you were following somebody, and he was choosing a little different route of how to get there, and you were getting really frustrated. Peter Martin, you say, you have to follow. This is the way that you have to go to get there. And he said, "Oh, I can. If I take the route I take, I will get there just the same way, Claudia." It's Peter Martin. And he was right.
He usually was.
Right.
Oh, gosh.
And another thing I remember,
Uncle Pete involves Laddie.
Oh, that's right.
Where was Laddie from? Where'd you guys get him?
We got him from Alaska. He came in Santa's Christmas bag one year. And and he came from a musher. I forget the name of the musher, Bruce, but anyway, he came from a musher, and we just enjoyed him for 13 years. He lived, and you guys used to take care of him. When we came down,
He tolerated us a little bit.
He dug holes, right, in the yard and got into the holes. I seem to remember something like that to stay cool.
Huskies.
Yeah.
To stay cool.
We
I-
enjoyed him.
Yeah, I remember I really wanted to name the dog Bandit, and that was just not. It wasn't high-minded enough for Dad. And
He had a mask.
he was like gently persuading me to move on from that name. Like that's a good name, but And
oh yeah.
And we named him after a river in the Yukon,
The Alatna.
Alatna.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I thought it's a hard name to say, and I didn't like it. But like now that I look back at it, I like where his head was at. He was.
So it wasn't Laddie, L-A-D-D.
We just did that to keep it simple. Alatna. Yeah.
Alatna.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah. It was a river.
Yeah.
and I remember every weekend, so we'd go up to Pete and Claudia's, and Pete would always have like six different versions of some Bach symphony, and he would put on, out of his huge collection, he'd put something on, and he'd test Steve to see if Steve could figure out from the sound what it was. And it was amazing that he could figure it out.
Yeah.
He could figure out the composer,
That's right.
Pete and I
the
were
conductor.
Pete and I were obsessively psychotic on this.
Yeah.
and it was just amazing the remote pieces that they would pull out and they could identify, and this went on for many years, and so it wasn't just the same old stuff, it was new stuff all the time.
And now I torture my friends with the same trick.
That's how we met you, Steve. Remember, you guys shopped in the records?
Yep.
And Pete couldn't figure out what had happened to some of the records or that he was possibly interested in buying. And it was Steve that had bought them, and they just discovered that one time.
And of course, they were cheap records because Pete was a skinflint.
As you.
Never paid retail.
Okay, tell me about smell. When you think of Pete, what smells come to mind?
Snow. The smell of snow, like 'cause it was skiing. Fresh powder.
High bush cranberries.
The high desert.
That's, yes.
And low bush cranberries.
Yeah, also.
Sharon and Bruce Calypso Orchids. Remember they?
Absolutely.
Yeah, on May 17th we used to go together. But you had to get right down on the ground to smell them, but it was worth it. Huh?
Yeah, you had to be humble.
You had to be humble.
Because they were that tall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it became a Mother's Day tradition
It
for our
did.
family.
Yeah, oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful.
I think a campfire smell is
Yeah.
used to make the fire in North Face Lodge in the mornings.
Yeah.
And on rainy days.
The fires in the wood stove in the music room.
Yeah.
That's right.
What were those mosquito candles that you
Oh,
Citronella.
I know. What
Citronella.
what
I
it
don't know
was?
if it was a candle, if it was like a kind of powder or something.
Well, Buhack. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Buhack. Yeah, Buhack. That stuff. But it was effective, you know.
That's an
so-
Alaska thing.
Yeah, in
Denali.
mosquito season.
What's it made out of?
Ground pyrethrum flowers. Ground pyrethrum.
Really?
Yeah.
Pyrethrum? That's a cool name.
Yeah.
And it has a smell.
Can you burn it until it smokes?
It smelled, yeah. In the kitchen staff, you used to put it up in the window when the breeze would come right at it, and it would blow that down. Do you remember that, or am I just?
Very particular smell. Like
Yeah.
people would burn it in their cabin, so you'd have to like introduce them to what it was, and that it's not. supposedly not
that it's not
for people.
toxic for them. Yeah.
Although I did watch a fly just fall out of the air.
This is the non-toxic smoke that kills flies.
And if you went outside, you thought you were going to die.
He sucked dry.
He wasn't much bothered by this.
He wasn't. No, you're
It's
right, Ann. He
incredible.
wasn't
He had
much
an
bothered.
immunity to it that was infuriating.
I know it.
Did he not get bitten, or did he just not welt up?
He didn't welt up, and I don't think he got bitten that much.
He also kept jumping into lakes, though.
Like the caribou. He got one
didn't
two
have
legs
the
instead
sweet
of looking
blood.
for the wind.
Didn't he wear netting with a hat when he went out?
Many people did up there, but I don't remember that Pete did that so much. But folks on his hikes would. Yeah, that's probably where it came from. Marion visited us once out at Captain Valley when we were
So
working.
wonderful.
Oh, it was.
And I remember Pete was describing all the little slow-growing flowers. We went out one morning, and we just walked out from the lodge, and he'd say, "Oh, and this is," I don't remember any of them, but he knew the names of every single one of these adorable little blossoms that were in the meadow.
I know. Yeah. It was joy. That was just a joy. Yeah.
one of my favorite stories, and I told Claudia the story just a bit ago, was he would get stuck and very, very focused on one specific thing. And I was up there visiting them, I was sleeping on their floor, they're up there for a couple of weeks, and I was out on one of the adventures. And we had two ladies from New York in the back, and then someone from Boston, so everyone was kind of peppy and wanted to go fast. And we were going by this lake on the left, not looking at Denali, but to the left. And there was just this bird that kept on going on this path over and over again and stopping at that one thing. And so he stayed there for a half an hour and photographed it and was talking about how amazing it was. And I think he played music. And the ladies from New York were like, we stopped for a half an hour for a bird. But he saw so many beautiful things that most people would just pass by. And he just zoned in on it. And he lived in that moment and he appreciated it. And it's kind of like you could live a lifetime in one single strand of his thoughts. He was a amazing man in that way. I try to slow down as much as I can, which is hard for me to do, but in part because of him, because I respect how he thought and I respect how much he loved nature.
Speaking of the hikes up at camp, there was one I went on with him with guests, and he spotted probably a good mile and a half away a grizzly working its way along a side slope, and we were at a pass, and it was about lunchtime, and he told the whole group to just sit down and have your lunch and be quiet, and we'll see what happens. And the bear worked its way up over the pass, and it came within probably 25 yards of us, and they ignored us completely. Everybody was quiet. There was a little Japanese kindergarten teacher, grandmother, who was sitting next to me, and I remember her saying, "Oh, my heart, it's beating too fast." They just calmed us all down and got us to see this amazing animal cross over and down the other side.
Have you all been hiking with him?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a universal experience.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Did he have a favorite kind of creature that would just stop him in his tracks, or did it not matter?
Like bear or caribou or
Wolves, but we used to call them the big five. You know, the bear, the wolf, the caribou, the doll sheep, and what was the other one? But anyway, but probably the wolf more than anything. Yeah.
Because they were the scarcest.
Yeah, I suppose that's fine.
Claudia, was it a wolverine that was that he saw when we were on one of those buses, and it was a rare thing. You can often see them.
Yeah, it was rare. It was a real find. You betcha.
Even the deer in the backyard, even as he was slowing down and spending more time inside, he was always watching the deer for the deer, and chances are he would alert you to their presence. He was actively watching and waiting, and I'm sure for a lot of people in this room, he pointed out an animal or a bird or something to you, and those were special moments. But yeah, he was fascinated by animals and plants and nature.
Yeah.
What? Why?
Since boyhood, there are drawings on the wall in the spare bedroom in here that he did when he was a kid in New Jersey, and I think he used crayon or something like crayon, but a squirrel, a pine marten. I mean, with pretty incredible detail for a young person.
For a 12-year-old.
So, but he would also kill these animals.
He was a hunter.
He was a hunter. So
less so as he got older.
Yeah. But he was just fascinated by their presence.
By the whole world. Yeah.
So was your freezer full of game?
We often had game, and that was one of the primary motivations too. But you know, Chris, I think he just was able to vent frustrations in the world, or in the immediate world around us, you know, by really focusing on something out of our world, a different, you know, and the different strategies animals had to do different things. He really focused on that and observed it keenly. Yeah. It was a gift.
Yeah.
His love of nature was a gift from God, I think.
I'm hearing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you guys meet?
Through friend, had us over to dinner.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was my mid-20s. Well, I'm 20s.
Okay.
And Pete was older than I was. He was 30 when we got married. I was 26 and he was 31, and and we met and we dated a little bit, and then we had Bud was in Europe, and so I went to stay with Bud and Barb, and then Pete came over to visit, and then he said, "Well, why don't you go back to Bend? I'm going to go back to Bend from Alaska." He was living there at the time, and so I thought, "Oh, okay." So then, yeah. But that's how we met, was introduced by friends who thought we would make a good couple, I guess.
I guess.
Years. In November this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were right.
They were right.
Mom, you were in Europe, weren't you, when you saw those black and white photographs? Do you remember telling me about that? You were in Europe.
Yeah.
And you might have been at a train station, and there were these beautiful black and white photographs, and it made you think of him.
It was in Stockholm in the train station, and it was like a picture that Dad would have taken, and I just remember stopping and thinking, you know, I really miss that. I really miss that. Yeah. And so when he visited and said he was going back to Bend, so yeah.
Do you remember the first
And that reminds me, when you got married,
Yeah.
you would not wait for Barb and me to get back so we could attend your wedding. And I think the reason was he heard that there was a forecast that was going to get above 40 below zero, and he wanted to get up there now.
Yeah, he loved that cold weather. Yeah. Part of that Alaskan experience.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
you either love it, Chris, or you hate it.
Is it true that he got you and Eric out there, and when Eric was a baby and he was in one of those sleds, and you were out there tenting in the Arctic in the middle of winter?
That is not true, Bud.
Where did I get that?
Well, there was a picture of Eric in his, I think he was about 6 months old. We had a picnic table in the back, and we'd had a big snowstorm, you know, like 8-10 inches. And Pete took him out there and put him in that little seat in a snowbank and took his picture. Whatever.
I can remember Pete taking Eric and me skiing up at Gunsight Mountain.
Oh, gosh.
And Pete thought this would be a great experience for his son. We were probably 5 or 6, something like that. We got there, it was 15 below, and the wind was blowing. We made it about a quarter of a mile and went to the lodge and had hot chocolate.
Remember, Bruce?
I was miserable.
I know. Well, remember Eric's jacket that he wore and his pants? They crackled real funny, and it scared Eric, you know, because of the.
I don't think they probably, you know, synthetics. They weren't tested for that kind of climate. They were literally probably breaking apart. But he was determined, like, you know. But he wanted to share it. So if someone wasn't into it, he'd maybe try one more time. But then he wanted to share those things with people.
Yeah.
And there are
That was the
moments of
important thing.
transfiguring beauty. I remember one of the high points of my life was in Thompson Pass, going up to the top of the ridge, Tin Can Glacier rather, and it was phenomenally cold. It was the middle of January, and No, it's middle of January. You see?
When I went, when we went, when I went with you.
You weren't with me on
It
this
was in
trip.
March.
We had a great trip up there too, but you weren't with me. But anyway, we got to the top of Tinkan Glacier, and you could see Prince William Sound in the distance, and the glaciers were the color of greenish, astounding color. The conditions were so still that the frost feathers, which were 2 inches tall, would stand vertically. If you would so much as breathe on them, they would blow over like a deck of cards. The light in the middle of January was like bubble gum in the highlights and deep azure blue in the shadows. And I remember thinking when we were photographing up there that I will never experience another thing like this in my life. It was a perfectly transfiguring experience, and it still is. And Pete got phenomenal images of that day, and I did. And it's one of the nice things about a certain level of photography is you have a mnemonic proof. This happened. Look at it. And Pete had a lifetime of those proofs.
That's right, Steve.
Like you and the boys.
What are you noticing that you're missing? Or when do you miss Pete already?
I guess I miss him more all the time, Chris. The fact that he's gone, you know, and have shared this with many friends and family. I don't miss what he was going through, but there's just something about when somebody's gone. Yeah. The memories help so much. Yeah.
I miss the onus that he provided me to get me out into nature. Because he was the instigator of a lot of trips, you know, me and Dave, or me and you guys up in Alaska.
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
You know, going cross country skiing. I never do that any other time. You know.
Same.
I think we had about 25 pairs of cross-country skis too. Because he was pretty particular. He would like some for a while, but then he would want to try something new. But that meant that if there was a group of people, that he had equipment for almost everybody.
He's an outfitter.
Yeah. Every shoe size too, somehow. It's like between 9 and 13.
Yeah. His feet were so misshapen. He kept having to get different kinds of shoes to be comfortable in walking or skiing.
And somebody mentioned cross-country skiing and the things that he could do on a cross. But I remember he took us out one time, Judy and I, we went around, we followed, I don't know if you were with us or not, sis, but there was this little cove or hole where he'd get in there and he'd go in there and he said, now this is where I nap. And he said one time he was napping in there and he woke up and here's this Stellar J looking at him right in the face. That was Pete.
He went with me, took me cross-country skiing with him, and he was very complimentary. I didn't fall, so I guess I had pretty good balance, but he made a big deal about how good I was doing.
Did you ever go skiing with us?
No, I was not an outdoorsy person. I was allergic to most everything growing up. That was nothing to do with outdoors, so it's not my scene. And then to top it off, Uncle Pete, when I was, I can't remember exactly if it was while I was living here, when I was working on log homes or something, he was talking about this filmmaker, Stanley Kubrick. What a great film this one film he did was. He said I should watch it. I said, well, okay. So he went and rented it. It was Clockwork Orange. I'm watching this and there's something wrong with this guy.
He loved that movie.
Oh,
Really?
Clockwork
That's
Orange.
surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great movie, don't get me wrong, but I'm watching it and the way Uncle Pete was going on about it, I was expecting something totally different. And when I saw it, I was like, there's something wrong with you, man.
I don't know, like, what drew him to. I think he found it fascinating. The characters would get high drinking milk. That was like the beverage. And I think what it was about it, if I think about it now, is that it was free-spirited kids. And they were reckless, out of control a little bit, but they were free-spirited and they were having fun. And then to see the state step in and try to reprogram them into civil people, I think he was fascinated by that.
You're missing something, Eric. Young thugs who loved classical music.
They did.
Oh.
Beethoven. It's
Beethoven,
all about
Rossini.
Ludwig van.
Yep.
It's true. Thank you, Steve.
Rang his bells a couple ways.
Yeah.
Mountain to the observatory. As the guy comes out with a gun, didn't close down, and whichever one of the two uncles I was with managed to talk the guy into giving us a guided tour. But he was there to protect it.
Speaking of guns, I never witnessed it, but I heard there was black powder and a firearm at New Year's.
Yes.
What did he fire?
It was his little cannon.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And he, one time shortly after we moved down here, Bruce, it was New Year's Eve, and so we were celebrating, and he loaded up the shot in the canyon and everything and shot it off, just about went right through the patio door window. Just missed it.
Didn't one of those shots get embedded in a tree or something?
It could be, Brian. It could be. I think so. Oh gosh. Yeah. Yep.
Needless to say, my memories of Uncle Pete are different than these guys.
Right.
Well, you were gone for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved back east for a while. I was in the Army for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed here for a while, but at that point in time, I was concentrating on work. Wasn't really much for running around and hiking. Not my idea of fun.
But you went to Alaska.
Huh?
You went to Alaska?
Yeah, I fell in a crevice and broke my kneecap.
The crevasse.
We were like 80 miles beyond it, and I'm like, oh, that's okay, I don't need to see it. She's like, no, she drives me back. And then it's like another 210 miles to the nearest doctor. And I'm in the back end of one of those tiny, early 70s Honda station wagons.
That or a Volkswagen Beetle.
With an injured knee.
Didn't you have a Pacer?
What?
Didn't you have a Pacer that had no shocks?
No. Oh,
This was
Yeah,
79.
It was all suspension.
It was built like a tank.
Yeah, it rode
The
like a
doors
tank.
were like a foot thick,
Yeah.
but it had big windows, and that's what he wanted.
The pace, it was
He
crazy.
could look out the windows. That was what drew him to that car. Not what most people would think about when they got in a car, but he liked how it looked outside from inside.
It was
Spent
the
the
old
last week up
VWs that I
there
remember.
on crutches.
On crutches. Oh gosh.
And an ankle cast, a wrist cast, and a leg cast.
So you had a tour of story, a tour of memories, a tour of beauty. I heard a
terror.
I hear a lot of deep respect, honor, appreciation. This is an unusual man. You all know that. There's other people that don't get talked about this way when I sit with families. You've been blessed. Each of those moments you've named are things that are true for you, and you're going to feel them again. You're going to have these memories again, and other things are going to create those memories. You're going to see another orchid. You're going to smell berries. You're going to see a wolf. You're going to have these, and it's not going to be the same flower, but you're going to get transported. This is how it works with life and love and grieving. We don't grieve the things we did not love, right? People die all the time, and it doesn't affect us. And then somebody dies that we're close to, and it affects us a lot. I want to invite you as a pastor to not run away from that experience, but to embrace it. When lingonberry jam is on an English muffin, and all of a sudden your blood pressure changes, and you're gasping for breath, or you're just weeping quietly, that's love. That's honor and respect. God gave you the lingonberry jam to remember Pete. That's how God works. That is love, and God is love. You're actually experiencing, believe it or not, the divine. Whatever the divine is when we're transcendently, what was your word? That was gorgeous. Transcendently changed. When we're moved in a way that we didn't expect, you're experiencing something bigger than us. And we pastor people call that divine presence, which is obvious when you're looking at Denali, when you're looking at herd of caribou. Sometimes it's less obvious when you're sitting with humans, and yet there's these moments, and so these moments are a gift to us to help us when we're missing Pete. They're a gift to help us move into the years to come, but also to invite others behind us into that story. You have a reverence that he taught you that you're teaching other people. That's part of God's plan. Because your life is better because of it. That's love, and that's the gift. So you've just told amazing stories. I'm not going to tell your stories tomorrow.
Okay.
You might hear a little bit of your vocabulary coming out of me, but your stories are your stories. But the stories are important to help you move through. Grieving is the art of navigating the stories that move us. Grief is kind of like body surfing. Now, you don't do that in the tundra, but if you were to be out at the coast and you were body surfing, the waves come and you don't get to tell the waves to stop. They're going to come anyway, right? And if you're body surfing, the art is to catch the wave. And the waves come, and you can either dive through the wave. If it's not the right wave, you can go under it. You can let it rise underneath you, or you can deny the wave. And if you deny the wave will have its way with you, and you'll have a lot of sand in your bathing suit if you're wearing one. Grieving is the same way. We can anticipate certain moments that are just going to, and actually we can go looking for them. I think today's the day for lingonberry jam. I think a cold hams would be a good thing today. There's ways you'll say, I'm honoring Dad. I'm honoring Pete. I want this experience. And there's other times when you're going to be with somebody else, and out of nowhere you're going to have a hot flash because you're remembering those are the waves. So the art of grieving is surfing the waves and saying, okay, I'm having a Pete moment. Ride it, baby. I'm going to see things. I just saw a golden eagle. Holy smoke, stop the car. I know where one of those lives, up in the Ocean Coast. And so grieving is letting those things be delightful to us to live well. But in the ocean, there's also sneaker waves that come at 45 degrees. You don't see them coming, and they do fill your suit with sand. And taking the sand out is also love. Well, all right, God. I was loved, and I did not see it coming. That might be at the grocery store when you see the thing he liked to eat. And now all of a sudden, whoops, I'm a kind of a mess. But embrace the gift of the love you've been given, the integrity, the honor, the reverence for life. Wow. What would happen